September 12, 1944. The Pacific sun was already brutal by 0800 hours as Major Robert "Cowboy" Stout climbed into the cockpit of his F6F Hellcat aboard the USS Hornet. The carrier deck around him was organized chaos. Colored jerseys darting between aircraft, fuel fumes hanging in the salt air, and the unending roar of engines winding up for the morning sorties. Stout had flown 63 combat missions, but something about this morning felt different. The briefing the night before had been vague, almost dismissive. The target? Peleliu. A speck of coral and jungle in the Palau Islands, unknown to most Americans, but about to become a killing ground. In 3 days, 15,000 Marines would storm those beaches in what commanders predicted would be a quick 3-day operation. It would take 2 months and nearly 10,000 American casualties. But Stout didn't know that yet. His mission was simple: fly reconnaissance over the northern airfields, take photographs, confirm enemy air activity, and return to base. Intelligence said the fields were abandoned or lightly defended. Just another box to check before the invasion began. As Stout's Hellcat approached Peleliu from the east at 8,000 feet, he began his photo run, the automatic camera clicking steadily behind his cockpit. Then he saw something that froze his blood. The airfield wasn't abandoned. It was alive. Below him, lined up wingtip to wingtip, were dozens of Japanese aircraft. Mitsubishi Zeros, Nakajima torpedo bombers, Aichi dive bombers, fueled, armed, and ready for takeoff. He counted quickly. At least 40 planes, maybe more, parked in neat, tight rows near the jungle edge. This wasn't a defensive outpost. It was a strike force preparing to obliterate the American invasion fleet steaming toward Peleliu at that very moment. If those planes launched, thousands of Marines would die before even reaching the shore. Stout's training told him to radio back, report, and let the fleet organize a proper strike. But protocol would take hours. By the time reinforcements arrived, the Japanese would have dispersed, hidden their planes, or worse, already be in the air. Right now, they were sitting ducks. He dropped to 3,000 feet, photographing every detail even as his instincts screamed about anti-aircraft fire waiting below. Then he noticed the fatal mistake. The aircraft were parked far too close together, and beside each one sat fuel drums, hundreds of them. A single tracer round into one of those drums could ignite a chain reaction across the entire airfield. The Japanese had unknowingly built a bomb that only needed a spark. Stout checked his gauges. Full ammunition, enough fuel for a strike and return. His Hellcat, with its .650 caliber Brownings, carried 2,400 rounds, 12 seconds of firepower in total. Hardly enough to destroy 40 aircraft individually, but perhaps enough to start a firestorm. He also knew the risks. Japanese 25mm anti-aircraft guns ringed the airfield, and once he attacked, every one of them would zero in on him. He would be alone, unsupported, and without rescue if he went down. But the decision was clear. Every second he waited meant death for men aboard those American transports. Doctrine could wait. War sometimes demanded disobedience in the service of victory. He pushed the throttle forward, the Pratt & Whitney engine thundering to life as the Hellcat dove like a hunting hawk. Palm fronds whipped in his slipstream as he leveled off just 50 feet above the treetops. Ahead, the airfield opened like a shooting gallery. Ground crews below looked up in confusion, seconds before realization turned to panic. Fuel drums gleamed beside aircraft, reflecting the rising sun. Stout squeezed the trigger. The Hellcat shuddered as all 6 guns roared, tracers streaking toward the target in red arcs. His first burst tore through a line of zeros. The second hit the fuel drums, and the world exploded. Flames erupted in a chain of detonations. Fuel drums igniting aircraft, aircraft igniting neighbors. Fireballs leapt into the air, spreading liquid fire across the tarmac. High-octane gasoline burned hotter than metal could withstand. Within seconds, the pristine rows of Japanese fighters became a raging inferno. Stout's bullets ripped through torpedo bombers, their fuel loads detonating so violently that the shock wave buffeted his Hellcat mid-flight. In 4 seconds, half the airfield was a furnace. Anti-aircraft gunners began firing blindly through the smoke, tracers clawing the sky. But the Hellcat was already past their range. He pulled up sharply, banking to assess the damage. 15 aircraft destroyed. The rest engulfed in fire. But 20 more remained. He had half his ammunition left. He circled once, saw the southern dispersal area still intact, and dove again, this time from a different angle, lower, slower, through a storm of tracers that stitched the air around him. Shrapnel slammed into his tail, rattling the fuselage, but controls held firm. He opened fire again, hosing 5 Zeros taxiing for cover. One erupted instantly, the pilot bailing out in flames. Another rolled to a stop, dead in its tracks. The last tried to reach the jungle before Stout's rounds punctured its tank, turning it into a fireball at the tree line. His left guns ran dry, the Hellcat now shaking from unbalanced recoil. He fought the controls, found 2 dive bombers beside a revetment, and emptied his remaining rounds. Both went up in twin explosions. A fuel truck caught fire and detonated, flipping end over end. His ammunition counter hit 0. In just 2 passes and 15 seconds of trigger time, he'd unleashed hell itself. The entire airfield was now burning, a rising pillar of smoke visible for 50 miles. Every aircraft was destroyed or crippled. Anti-aircraft fire still stitched the sky, but there was nothing left to defend. Stout pulled away, climbing toward the ocean. Behind him, Peleliu's northern coast was an inferno. Aircraft, fuel, ammunition, all consuming one another in the world's most destructive domino effect. 40 Japanese aircraft, annihilated in 8 minutes by a single pilot. The tactical implications were enormous. Without those planes, the Japanese garrison had lost its air cover. The invasion fleet would now approach unopposed. The Marines landing 3 days later would face a nightmare on the ground, but they would not die under skies filled with bombers. One pilot had changed the fate of thousands. As his adrenaline ebbed, Stout took stock of his battered aircraft, holes in the tail, scorched wings, hydraulics leaking but still flying true. The radio buzzed with frantic chatter from the Hornet. Other pilots were reporting a massive smoke column over Peleliu. The carrier's controllers demanded answers. Stout keyed his mic. "Hornet Control, this is Stout. Mission complete. Peleliu airfield neutralized. Returning to base." The response crackled back, disbelief in the controller's voice. "Say again your last, Stout. Did you say neutralized?" Stout smiled. "Affirmative. The airfield is no longer operational. Recommend a photo recon bird to confirm." 40 minutes later, he caught the number 3 arrestor wire on Hornet's deck, jolting to a stop amid a stunned flight crew. His tail was riddled with shrapnel, fuselage scorched, ammo counters all 0. The deck fell silent as the realization spread. The smoke they'd seen on the horizon came from one man's mission. The debriefing lasted 3 hours. Intelligence officers asked the same questions over and over, unable to believe it. How many passes? 2. How much ammo? All of it. Wingmen? None. The photos confirmed everything. 40 planes destroyed. The airfield reduced to blackened wreckage. For his courage and decisive action, Stout received the Navy Cross. For extraordinary heroism and distinguished service in aerial combat. Yet he rarely spoke of the mission. After the war, he returned to California, worked in aerospace, raised a family, and lived quietly, almost anonymously. Even his children grew up not knowing that their father had once destroyed an entire enemy airbase single-handedly. It wasn't until decades later, when historians uncovered his mission reports, that Robert "Cowboy" Stout's name re-emerged, cited in tactical manuals as a masterclass in initiative, precision, and exploiting enemy error. His solo strike became a case study in modern air warfare, proving that one pilot, acting decisively and with understanding of battlefield conditions, could alter the course of an entire campaign. Stout passed away in 1989 at the age of 73, long after his story had faded from public memory. His obituary mentioned his Navy service in a single paragraph. Yet, on the beaches of Peleliu, thousands of Marines survived because of one man's decision to act when orders told him not to. Because one pilot saw an opportunity, pushed his Hellcat into a dive, and lit the fuse that changed the Pacific War. That is Robert "Cowboy" Stout's true legacy. Not medals or citations, but the lives saved by courage that defied convention and by a moment's decision that the risk was worth everything.